Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Tiernan. I want to thank you for watching my NCA session on demand, Funding the Kingdom, What Catholic Leaders Need to Know About Philanthropy in 2022. I'm currently principal at St. Mary Magdalene School in Wilmington, Delaware, in the Diocese of Wilmington. And the reason behind this session is thinking about so many of our schools that have struggled over the last few years, especially during COVID, and how many of the schools, the Catholic schools in particular, that have struggled and closed over the last few years, primarily because of finances. And in many ways, I feel very passionate about the fact that if schools can articulate a mission, a Catholic vision for the future rooted in sound development principles, sound culture of philanthropy, our schools will not only survive, they will thrive and they will flourish. And so in this session, I hope to go through some of the basic tenets, building blocks of building any culture of philanthropy. And many of the things that I describe will require no money at all. And in many times, in many ways, very little staffing or changes to your current culture. Now, obviously, I don't know your school culture. I don't know your school history. But what I want you to do is, as we go through some of these slides and ideas, think about where your community is in regards to these principles. How might you challenge your administration, your families, your alumni, your grandparents, parents, all the different constituencies you serve? How might you reach out to them in different ways that help fund your part of the kingdom? And so as I see it, there are really 10 steps, top 10 steps, if you will, to building this culture of philanthropy. And these are in no particular order. The first is critical communication. What we mean by that, what it looks like. The ask, which is often what fundraisers will call, the big request for money, the funds. And in many times in Catholic schools, we're reticent to do this for a number of reasons. Some of us may be uncomfortable with money. We may find it embarrassing. We might be scared of rejection. And all those are very natural, but we'll maybe talk through some ideas about how that might be a little bit easier. Gratitude, again, very straightforward. But what does it mean to thank your community? What does it mean to thank your donors? And what does that look like on a consistent basis throughout the school year, throughout the calendar year? It's all about the data. Data, data, data. Like in real estate, they talk about location, location, location. Well, in this case, we're talking about your data, your donors, your individuals in your community. And what does it mean when we talk about communication preferences or how we track event participation or gifts or whatever it might be? How you record, curate, and look at your data is essential in the 21st century. It's paramount in 2022, how people wish to be addressed, how people wish to be communicated with. All of these things are essential for building the relationships in your community. Speaking to your audiences, again, not knowing, do you have a large grandparent influence in your school community? There's some special ways to reach out to grandparents that can invite them to be a richer, more diverse part of your own community. You may also have a large graduate population. How do you reach out to graduates for different events, volunteer options, not just fundraising? Because as we'll see, those relationships require more than just asking. This is about participation and about having greater ownership in the wider culture that you belong to. Creating multiple giving opportunities. Sometimes there's very flashy fundraising, bake sales, things of that nature. And not that there's anything wrong against those, but today we're talking about multiple giving opportunities that, again, invite that greater participation on the part of the community. And how do you open it up so that everyone can participate in your community, not just top level donors and not just donors that maybe only give $10 a year, whatever amount it might be. If we truly believe that every gift counts, then every donor has to count as well. So there is no such thing as only this amount. Every gift counts. Relationships demand practice and patience. And in some ways, this might be a truism, this might be a no-brainer, but it's an important notion that we don't immediately move into transactions with individuals. Relationships, as we all know, take time. They must be fostered, they must be promoted, and they must be continually invested in. Make giving simple. Keep it simple. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Sometimes different writers and different commentators will say cheesy is good, right? Cheesy is good. Puns, corny, hokey, but they work. Different hooks in marketing. All of these things, which you may not agree with, but there's a stickiness to it that your donors in your community will find affinity for. And keeping it simple helps that. People are very busy and they don't need another website to click through or another list of things they have to go through to make a donation to your school. So we're going to talk about how to ensure that that is simple but efficient. Celebrating your successes. How do you recognize the value of your community? How do you recognize the impact of what they have done for you and how that's going to lead and sustain the future of your community? And finally, prioritizing your vision. Finances are only a means to an end. And in this sense, they're only a means to building mission. Yes, they're essential in many ways, but when you build up that culture of philanthropy with your vision at the forefront, I will almost guarantee you the gifts, the support will come, and they will come in time if you are consistent with your messaging and you never lose sight of your mission, your core values, and your goals. So let's dig a little deeper into critical communication. You want to vary your communication mediums. Oftentimes people will think that direct mail no longer has impact or bearing. Couldn't be further from the truth. Multiple studies have shown direct mail, specifically defined direct mail with even certain packaging, envelopes, invitations on the outside, do facilitate a higher open rate. Direct mail will often reach many donors who either choose not to participate in giving through email or maybe other social media channels that may not be a priority for them. Direct mail is essential for any culture of philanthropy at your school. But you may also find that Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn are other communication mediums. Think of your own community for a second and think about how you currently reach out to them. How do you let people know about events at your school? How do you invite people to maybe have a sponsorship of a play or another event? These are all ways to communicate with donors and create what is known as a touch point. A touch point is not just an ask for a donation. A touch point might be coming to a school football game, might be coming to an open house, might be reaching out by email, asking about different classes or different curriculum. All these things are important and go back to that notion of data, which we quickly introduced, about how we build these profiles for donors and for individuals so that we can speak to them and their needs. Consistency and frequency are key with communications. Very interesting. Over the last couple of years with COVID, many donors in various philanthropy reports reported that many of the charities they gave to went quiet. They went silent. And many people really looking at this data were wondering, where is this coming from? And in some ways, charities and nonprofits felt that donors didn't want to be bothered at this time. It's been such a difficult, stressful time that a lot of nonprofits pulled back in their communication. But those who have reached out have found actually a pretty significant increase in donations and attentions from donors. Many donors across the board are giving to fewer charities, but they're increasing their giving to those charities. So in many ways, we are competing with other very important, very worthy nonprofits. So your consistency and frequency of communication with donors is essential. There's that old adage, if you want advice, ask for money. And if you want money, ask for advice. Sometimes this is true with communication. As you ask for advice and input from donors or just from members of your community, you will find that invariably people want to be part of your community. They want to be more significant contributors and investors in community. And this is one important way to begin that. And this is the first of really 3 important parts of that cycle of giving and asking that we'll talk about. The ask. And it's put in quotes because many times fundraisers think this is the very nerve-wracking event. This is asking for maybe a significant gift for a capital campaign. Maybe it's just asking for a modest upgrade in giving. But specificity is essential here for an ask. I've seen many nonprofits and many different schools will say, we'd love to have you make a gift of $1,000 to $3,000. Think about that. As a donor, what would you prefer or what would you give? Most of us would say, okay, I can maybe make $1,000 gift. But as an asker, as a fundraiser, you've missed an important point about specificity. In giving a targeted ask to a donor, perhaps maybe based on giving history, you recognize their contribution to your school and you recognize their capacity for what they can give to your school. Many people are flattered if you ask for more than they can give. I remember one time I met with a donor and I was with my executive director and we asked for a 6-figure gift. And the gentleman politely said, I can't do that at this time, but I can help out with other things. And that's important. It's an important engagement piece. And he went on to continue to give several high-level gifts, not the original amount we had asked, but nevertheless, he was engaged. He was very touched by our connection with him, and building that relationship allowed us the comfortability and the access to speak with him about that. But you have to answer that question of donors. Why should I give you my hard-earned money? When you think about it, giving is quite irrational. It doesn't make sense to give away your money that you've earned. And that's important because giving, donating, in many ways is an emotional relationship. You are appealing to people's sense of commitment, their identity, whether it's religious, academic, social. And you as an institution have to be prepared to answer that question. Why should I give you my hard-earned money? You might call that your case for support. You might call that your mission. But whatever answer you give, be prepared to address that. Because you have to answer why you need donors to accomplish this goal. How will I, as a donor to your school, make this need met? How will I make it a reality? Because finances and numbers are great, but they're simply a means to building mission. They're simply an avenue for allowing your message, your brand, your community to grow and benefit the children that are in your service, support the faculty that are the primary caregivers, and really continue to impact your local community. Gratitude. This is really, the first 3 are primarily what you would think of with any giving program. How you communicate a report, the ask, which ideally should be really only part of your overall development plan, and then gratitude, which in many ways should permeate your entire year. Because of you, 3 of the most powerful words you can use. Because, showing cause and relationship with what a donor may have given. Because of you, not because of your gifts, but because of you as an individual with dignity and respect, we were able to raise, say, $50,000 to support financial aid. There is a mental Velcro that clicks with that. Language is important. Your words are important. People are busy. We have shorter and shorter attention span. Maybe even in watching this video, I have to create different transitions to keep your attention. Your donor is no different. Think of your own mail, your email. You have to grab people's attention, but you have to show that gratitude consistently. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You can never say those two words enough. My mother used to always remind me going over to a friend's house, yes, please, and no, thank you, right? Thank you for inviting me. Basic principles that are crucial when it comes to development. No one has ever said, you can stop thanking me. I've never heard anyone say that. It's an important value and skill to remember because there's an emotional connection here. Like I said before, reason doesn't apply to fundraising in the immediate sense of the word. It's emotional. You're creating a reaction. And when you look at different fundraising platforms and strategies, there are different emotions that are used. Anger, envy, joy, desire, all of these things to entice people and make them more tuned into your message. You want to create that mental cognitive dissonance that creates that connection with your institution. And in schools, we know that sometimes this might be pretty simple. An alumnus, an alumni may have a natural connection to your school. Obviously, they graduated from there. Parents, former parents, saw their children go through your school and benefit in the real world, going off to high school, college, the workplace. But you also want to find ways of anchoring gratitude throughout the year. Valentine's Day, great way of sharing the love with donors. Different days throughout the year around the holidays, celebrating you, our donor. Again, these are all ways to show your gratitude for no reason whatsoever. There's kind of a cute word some fundraisers will use called a THASK, T-H-A-S-K, meaning you should never infuse an ask within a thank you. And there's some truth to that. Sometimes a thank you is just a thank you. You don't have to ask for funds in that thank you. You don't have to direct them to your website or a QR code. Just thanks goes a long way. It's all about the data. It's all about the data. And this is where you may choose to invest into a CRM, a customer relationship manager, or some type of program to help organize and process your donors. Because you have to ask these questions and take a minute to think about it. Whether you have a current giving program or you're looking into one, or maybe you're somewhere in between. Who are your donors? They might be parishioners. Like I said before, they might be grandparents. They might be current parents. They might be friends of your community. Whoever it is, you want to begin to segment all of the people in your community, especially donors, so that you can have messaging that's appropriate and germane to them. You want to meet them where you're at, just like we do in the classroom with students. How do you track them? This might sound like a lot of oversight, but by tracking, I mean, do they go to programs? Do you host gift events, leadership gift events for different donors? Do you invite them to the play or a different school program? And what do you do to ensure that they have ownership in how they're communicated with? Some people are happy making a gift and don't care to pursue any further relationship with your school. That's perfectly fine. Some people want to be stewarded and spoken with and invited to events. They want to enter into that relationship. And again, that's contingent upon their stage in life in many times. Who has extra time? Who has disposable income? Who's not worried about college tuition or high school tuition at the time? All of these things play a factor into your data and the relationships that you need to be mindful of when you're making an ask or how you're building that as part of your community. Lastly, do you create multiple touch points with every donor throughout the year? Like I said before, a touch point can be an email, could be an invitation, One time we invited several donors to an event and many people couldn't make it. But the beauty of it was that everyone was touched and flattered that we asked them to join us for this event. That's a touch point. It's not a loss if someone can't attend or even doesn't give. You're sending the message that you are thinking about them. They matter, and the institution and the administration and the entire school community is grateful for what they do with their time, talent, and treasures. Speak to your audiences. Speak to your audiences. Not everyone is created equal in terms of who they are, where they're at. And so you want to have a differentiated attention. We talk about differentiated instruction in the classroom. This is differentiated attention. For example, your graduates say out of an elementary school may not have any real capacity for several years. And that's okay, and that's reasonable. But you want to keep in touch with them. You want them to update their information with you, updating contact info. That's your data piece, their email, etc. Parents. How do you speak to parents who maybe already are paying tuition and talking about what it means to go above and beyond with making a gift to support the school towards technology, financial aid, whatever your cause may be? Former parents. Very interesting constituency in terms of they've seen the fruits of your school's labor. They know the benefit in seeing this in their children. How do you address them and still make them part of your community? And I've mentioned before, grandparents, amazing opportunities for volunteerism, different levels of engagement. Typically, grandparents have more of that time to share, to spend, to support your school, be a teacher's aide for their grandchild's class, Zoom in for out-of-state grandparents, or create a video sharing a story, all things that cost absolutely nothing, but have very high levels of engagement. Meet your donors where they are in terms of giving options. Russell James, who's one of the great experts in giving and financial planning, will often say that, cash is not king. Cash is not king, meaning a lot of times when you think of people's financial wealth, it is not in cash. It might be in investments or other non-liquid options, real estate. And sometimes that's easier for people to give from. There's nothing wrong with a check. There's nothing wrong with a gift from a credit card, a debit card, or a check. But when you can grow in your knowledge of selling stocks, which could be at no cost to donors, 401k withdrawals, especially at a certain age when you have required minimum distributions, where people have to withdraw from a 401k, by giving to a nonprofit, they can actually save on their taxes and they can benefit from it just as you would. Bequests. Easiest time to make one of the most significant, impactful gifts you're ever going to make. And it costs nothing. And yet it can speak to everything with your community. Anyone can put an institution as a beneficiary of an insurance policy or list them as a beneficiary of a bequest in their future. And again, these are hard conversations sometimes, but important ones. Have you considered the name of your school in your financial planning, in your bequests? And if the answer is yes, wonderful. And if the answer is no, a follow-up, would you consider it? Fascinating data that many donors, an overwhelming majority of donors, do not put schools or nonprofits in their will simply because they're not asked. So the ask itself, however awkward or uncomfortable it might be for people, is also interesting because people don't do it. People don't do the very thing that is going to raise money for your institution. But these options allow donors to give according to their means. So in making these various offers to donors, you're building rapport and you're building relationships for your community. Create multiple giving opportunities. Again, if every gift counts, then every donor counts. But sometimes schools can slip into what I like to think of as flashy fundraising. Sometimes you try to sell something at school, $100 donation gets you part of this plaque, or a lot of times schools will sell bricks or pavers or things like that. And those are excellent opportunities, but how are you using it to engage and retain your donors? How are you building long-term giving opportunities for donors? Do you offer naming opportunities for scholarships for donors? Do you invite people to give at a certain level where they can make a true legacy gift, a true long-term gift? Again, depending on how your school is set up and situated, to make an investment on their behalf and share some of the residual earnings for that for a scholarship or however they deem fit. Because you want to allow everyone in your community to participate at some level, from maybe your recent graduates to your new graduates to your parents, everyone. But it's also important to recognize one of the big myths in fundraising. Sometimes you'll hear, if everyone just gave $10 or $100, we'd make our goal. It doesn't work that way. You may be familiar with what's called the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 principle. And the origins of this go back to late 19th century in Italy, where economists realized that 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the owners. What's interesting about this percentage is that in many ways it applies to a lot of different fields in business, in marketing, in fundraising, meaning that 80%, statistically speaking, and again, doesn't always apply, but roughly 80% of your gifts or your donations will come from 20% of your donor base. I would argue, and others would, that in many ways it's almost 90-10 or 95-5, that maybe your top 5 to 10% of your donors will be responsible for upwards of 90% of your total giving. Meaning some people are making significant gifts, and other people might be making smaller gifts, and some people will never make a gift at all, and that's perfectly fine. But this is all the more important as we talk about stewardship and cultivation and communication, that how you communicate with those donors is absolutely essential. Like I said before, there's more and more charities out there asking for your donors' hard-earned money. And so those who are communicating and being genuine in their relationship building are typically going to get their share of giving, because that relationship is being built. It's not just transactional. And so by incentivizing giving upgrades, you can move people up to different giving levels. Maybe this allows them to have greater insights into school operations. Maybe this allows them, you allow different premiums, or maybe different things that you're offering to them based on certain levels. Sponsorship is a great opportunity for this, for your school plays or different activities, publicity for their business. These are often premiums that can be used in fundraising that serve dual purposes. But at the end of the day, you want to create avenues for everyone to be able to be part of your mission. Perhaps another truism: relationships demand patience. Relationships demand patience. And it's relational over transactional. You don't start with an ask. That's like proposing on your first date. Wouldn't recommend it. But the relational will take time, and building trusts. People want to know where their money is going to. They want to know, how is this making an impact? I've often wondered about some gifts I've made to organizations where I don't hear anything long after the gift. Probably was just a transaction. But trusting relationships take time, and they take an investment on the part of an administration or a development professional. Your donors are not ATMs. And it's an important reminder that they shouldn't be viewed that way. And our Catholic values and mission inform us that the dignity of the individual is paramount in all things, and especially true with fundraising and building that culture of philanthropy. Make giving simple. With all of the technology and opportunities we have, sometimes we can complicate ourselves and our situations and our avenues and really get in our own way. Website interface, looking at your website. Where can I give to your school on your website? Is it easy to find? Do I have to click through several pages? This is what oftentimes is called friction. How much friction do you have in your website? How many click-throughs do I have to go through? How many fields do I have to fill out? Because that will oftentimes, many times, almost guaranteed, result in fewer gifts. People simply don't have the time to put in that work on a website or in a giving platform if it's not easy. Giving options. Like I said, speaking to your donors about how they prefer to give. A lot of times people like to give by Venmo these days. But do you accept ACH? Do you accept checks or electronic checks to be given on your website? What about PayPal? Other forms? The more diverse you can make your offerings, the easier it is for donors. And like I said before, having too many fields to complete can often stop a gift right in its tracks. So ask for as little information as you need for the gifts. Work on the other information later as part of that relationship building, but make giving simple. Celebrate your successes. And what I mean by this is focus on the we at this point over the me. This is not even about the you, because of you and thanks to you. This is about us, what we are doing. And sometimes schools struggle with this messaging because they want to talk about all the good things they are doing. And that's important. But you want to always ensure that the donor's narrative is inserted there. Where is the donor's voice in all of this? Let's return to that cycle of communication, ask, and gratitude. This should be done in perpetuity. The communication with your donors and informing them is crucial. The ask is obviously important too, but it should really represent a much smaller sphere in this cycle. And gratitude infused throughout the year, infused not only after an ask, but maybe leading up to an event, thanking them on maybe their giving anniversary, or thanking them for making a gift multiple years. All of these things tell your donor that they are respected, they are loved, and you are grateful for them. Reporting is also paramount to donor retention. Nonprofits have a pretty abysmal rate of retention, meaning the level of donors giving from year to year. It's roughly at 40%. Can you imagine having a 40% success rate in your school on a test? We want to do better than that. And schools are prime opportunities, prime environments to move this retention level higher. And that's due in no small part to making sure that you're doing all the things that I've described, communicating about projects, putting in and inserting where you need donors, thanking them, and making that specific ask. You build accountability for your organization and you highlight some of these donor narratives through, sometimes you might think of an annual report. It's not a typo on the screen, a gratitude report. And you can look at the work of John and Jen Love from Agents of Good, who do amazing work with a lot of different gratitude reports, more of a thank you for all that donors do for an organization, describing narratives, maybe a grandparent's history of giving, maybe an alumnus giving at a young age, highlighting those stories. It's puts a different emphasis on the typical annual report that might be only be for a select few in your community. Certainly reporting names and giving levels is important, but you want to tell those stories. And as schools, we are natural storytellers. So why not highlight that in an annual publication that can be very simple? And there are many free apps and programs out there that you can create a professional gratitude report for your donor. And there's tons of examples out there to show that. It's an absolutely crucial part of your sustained success. And lastly, to kind of begin or end where we started from, prioritizing your vision. Your school's vision must drive your culture of philanthropy. It cannot be an afterthought. Your vision for what your school will be and look like in the future will drive how you make these decisions in your school. What you envision for your school needs the support of your community. Many of our schools, our Catholic schools, have struggled primarily because of this lack of vision, due to a number of challenges and issues. But when people are clear about your direction and your vision, I believe this culture of philanthropy will follow. Two of my favorite phrases that speak to this: you make this possible, and you are a champion of our mission. Not your gifts, not something even you did. You, whoever that person is, you want to use that second person as much as you can, because that builds that relationship of ownership and appreciation with your donors. People want, dare I say, need. We all need to be agents of change and hope. Schools are perfect opportunities to invite people to a greater share of the kingdom. And this is, in many ways, a few steps to lead you in that, towards that path and to that goal. So I want to thank you for watching. I'm grateful for you taking the time during NCAA's conference to watch this on-demand session. I really look forward to getting any feedback or comments from you. I do often present at NCAA. I did enjoy making this on-demand video, and I hope that it's maybe create some good conversation within your communities. So please reach out to me by email or follow me on Twitter as another opportunity to engage. I look forward to hearing from you and how great the convention is this year. And may God bless all of our Catholic schools and the kingdom that we're all building in our own unique ways. Thank you very much.